Good afternoon. Welcome to webinar and online panel discussions on a career in IPC. Very happy to see that there are 325 registration done for this particular webinar, and we also conducted a survey. 99 participants has responded to those survey. So we are very thankful to all people who have responded to the survey that had given a lot of clue and questions of what are the things people are looking out of this webinar. So I will tell you, by the time other people are joining, I will tell you how the scope of the whole discussion will happen. Brief detail about the way we will go. We will do introduction of our panelists, and then we talk about maybe as a whole. This question was asked by many of you, that what changed in COVID-19, after COVID-19 in healthcare career, more specifically in IPC sector. Is there any change, impact in that? And then we'll have some interaction with you also. What I suggest you have already shared your questions. Hold on for some time before sending your questions, because your question might have been addressed by any of this panel member. At the end, we'll have a dedicated Q&A where you can ask the questions. We'll respond that question immediately if your question is not already answered. We'll also request you to participate in the poll. We have a couple of questions to know the opinion, because all of you are working professionals. We want to capture your opinion here and to show the whole group. So you participate their opinion also by just putting your finger in your mobile or laptop, wherever you are using that, seeing this, viewing this. And at the end, we'll also have a conclusion. So the whole thing will be very quick and short. So I see more than 50 people already logged in as of now. Anytime when you feel that the video is not moving, you're not able to hear, there is a play button. You need to just click it, the play button, and then whole thing will get refreshed for all the audience, and you will be able to see the entire webinar through. So let me start with the introduction here now. We are very fortunate to have three people from three different, altogether different perspective, different experience, and talking on the same topic, IPC as a career. We have President of IFCAI, Infection Control Academy of India, Dr. Ranga Reddy. He has a very wide experience in industry, in education. He's also honorary professor in University of Hyderabad. He has worked in European countries, so he brings about a lot of knowledge about healthcare as per se whole and IPC. He brought physically practices of IPC in India, what is being practiced in European countries. We have, from the practitioner point of view, I welcome Dr. Pradeep Panigrahi. He's a surgeon by training, but he's a medical director here in Hyderabad in a very big hospital, SLG hospital, with 999 bed hospital. So he brings about what's the modern, how the modern hospitals deals with the infection prevention and control, and possibly you will listen from him more about him and how he's seeing the future of career in IPC post COVID-19. From academics, again, he has worked with academics, as well as he has spent good amount of time in public health. He's an epidemiologist. Professor B.R. Shamana is a professor and the coordinator, the brain behind the whole curriculum, which you will come to know in short while about what University of Hyderabad and Infection Control Academy of India is initiated and rolled out 1.5 years back. With this brief intro, I would come to the most important questions which people asked, and the topic are being discussed, is that what changed COVID-19, after COVID-19? Before starting, let me give you a happy news. There is an article, a big article, 67 pages report published by McKinsey and Company. They talked about last fortnight only, very recent, in February, mid-February 2021. They talked about the shift in the career, shift in the profession globally. They have talked about globally Indian countries. They have talked about the India specifically also. So India is an important country. That's a good thing to note that. And what the important thing is that they have listed all the kind of area where there will be a shift. And the shift is that healthcare comes at the top globally and top in the India also, where there is a positive shift in the career, positive shift in the profession. So that is the immense point. You can Google it. This is freely available in internet. McKinsey report for career shift or COVID-19, what changes. You will see this lovely thing to see that healthcare is the top of the priority. With this here, now what I request before going to the panelists, what I want from our 56 participants who are already here, who have joined already here, a very straightforward questions that has the pandemic increased the career prospect of SCP in the infection prevention and control? So I'm starting with the opinion from the audience, and then same questions will be asked to each of the panelists. What is their perspective on the change? And I see that people have started responding that. So the audience may not be able to see right now the result of the poll, but I see responses coming up very fast. We'll allow maybe 30 more seconds, and you can see, the audience can see below your video, there is a button. You need to touch that button and you will be able to submit your response there. This is just a yes, no, can't say. Question is, has the pandemic increased the career prospect of HCPs in infection prevention and control? Yes, no, can't say. Okay, so we are ending the poll now and then showing the result. So I think you will be able to see the result now. 93% of the audience says that yes, there is a positive shift in the career in IPC. Nobody says no. That's a good thing. 6% said that. I think we need to know more about that. Now coming to the panelists, I start with Professor Rangareddy. Dr. Rangareddy and Professor Rangareddy is professor now at University of Hyderabad. So what is your perspective? How do you see that? Is the shift happened?
Very good evening, all. All the participants from all over the world. I see, including some of the colleagues from Europe joining. Good evening, Dr. Ivana. I see you there. Dr. Panigrahi, Dr. Shamanna, and of course, our today's moderator, Pranavji, and all the participants, a very good evening. I am very, very happy to see you all and the kind of enthusiasm and interest in a very novel kind of subject called infection prevention and control. I will come to that why I'm saying the word novel, because novel, we also talked about the novel coronavirus. Likewise, probably even the IPC is a novel thing as far as our Indian context is concerned. Answering straight to the question which is posed by the audience, yes, certainly, I think, I go with the audience kind of message, which is very, very clear. Almost like 90+% of the people have seen a shift in the dynamics as far as infection prevention is concerned. We see that worldwide, and especially I think in the Indian and low and medium income countries are concerned, I think there is a tectonic shift in terms of the way we have looked at, the way we have perceived earlier the infection prevention, and the way post-COVID we are perceiving. I think it is sky and earth. That is what I can say. The word which I have used again, the tectonic change. That means there is a major shift in terms of thinking at every level, starting from the policymakers, the heads of the governments, to the common man. Now today, there is no one person probably who would not be able to understand the importance of preventing infections. Preventing infections both at a community level and also at healthcare level. So I think the answer is absolutely yes. There is, the COVID-19, unfortunately, it has caused a lot of damage, both in terms of human lives, economic situation, and also, multiple other segments. But one thing which it has done positively is it has changed the kind of outlook which we had to have towards the preparedness for outbreaks, epidemics, pandemics, and also at an individual hospital level. What are the measures we had to take in order to reduce not only infections, but also ensure that the antimicrobial resistance is not going to go up. Probably I will elaborate a little more in the session at a later time. Pranavji, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Rangareddy. Now come to the practitioner. So, Dr. Pradeep Panigrahi, I would love to listen more from you. First, tell briefly about your hospital and how you see the IPC, Infection Prevention Control, shifting the career prospect in future from here.
Thank you, Mr. Pranab, and thank you, Mr. Rangareddy sir, for inviting me for this. And good afternoon all. Definitely, the current pandemic has brought a lot of changes. It was devastating in terms of life, economy, as well as job opportunities and many more things. But there are many good things added to it. It brought us the sense, the concept to approach towards pandemic, infection control, and preventive measures. WHO had actually started its first, you can say, the global patient safety norms in 2005 itself, where they focus on hand hygiene. We just saw it in pandemic, how every day in and day out, people started developing their habits of getting back hand hygiene, masking, social distancing. Every nooks and corners of this country, every child, every elderly people, name anybody, use three terms: hand hygiene, masking, and social distancing. That means the concept of IPC, or Infection Prevention and Control, has come a great way, and it has impinged into each life, not only the healthcare fraternity, not only the healthcare providers, not only the healthcare workers, but also the policymakers, also the common man, the community people, where we wanted to reach. So it has made us easier for us to reach the community when it comes to infection prevention and control. It made the life much easier for us now. Coming to the career opportunities, what Mr. Pranab questioned this. Obviously, the need for infectious control officers, the need for infectious control nurse has grown. The demand will grow. Earlier, only the corporates, bigger setups, where we established practices of infectious control was there, used to induct infectious control nurses in adequate numbers, used to induct infectious control officers, the one well trained. Majority of them are microbiologists, doctors, or physicians practicing infectious control, or intensivists practicing infectious control. So now that thing will grow. Many places we didn't have a structured training program for infectious control. Now that ICFI has come up with a beautiful program, so we can promote it and propagate it pan-India rather than pan-globally as well. Already in the Western world, they had structured programs. That's why they are much ahead of us couple of years back. Currently, we are not lagging behind because we all corporates, we are concerned about one thing. The first principle of patient safety for us is to do no harm to the patient. We know that patient has come to us not to be harmed. So our infections control to have not only one type, should be two tier now. The first one is the standard precautions, what we do. That is the basic patient care, risk assessment, and taking precautions measure for infectious control practices like use of PPEs or hospital friendly practices. The second one should be a transmission-based precautions. That is, if we got an infected patient or the patient has been admitted with sepsis, we should able to make sure that it is not propagated to the next. And this scenario, our healthcare facilities or corporate hospitals, or to the extent all government hospitals, where the healthcare has taken infectious control as a top priority, will definitely formulate better norms, better committees, better protocols, and better policies for infectious control. So, in short, what I will say, the prospect of a infectious control personnel, whether ICN or infectious control officer, will grow and grow. I'll cover up others in details with our discussion as it goes on. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Dr. Panagiri. See, the people who are in academics, they have a longer visibility. We, as a practitioner, we see the current, maybe
Yes.
next quarter or year. But the academicians see beyond the common man's, common people's like us visibility. So we are very fortunate to have Professor B.R. Shamanna, who is an academician, and see from a totally different perspective. So, sir, what is your perspective? How do you see setting up the whole infection prevention control as a practice, and of course to come about IPC as a career?
Sir, I first and foremost thank you very much, and a very good afternoon to everybody, and also to Rangareddy sir and Pranigarahi sir. Thanks for the opportunity, sir, and it's very heartening that you have a session like this, which has been sort of very appropriate, I guess. See, I can tell you a stated agenda and I can tell you a hidden agenda. First, I will do the stated agenda bit in terms of telling you that there is no question that in terms of the visibility of infection prevention and control, we have had this pandemic actually coming as a shot in the arm rather than, being not actually prioritized. That's one part of the stated agenda in terms of saying this pandemic has brought to the limelight, or it has proved to be the biggest advocacy tool, whether you're a practitioner, whether you're a manager, whether you're a policymaker or an academician. So we understand that the advocacy part has come in fit. The hidden agenda part, which I think you also should know, is none of you will be out of business if you get into the field of infection prevention and control. Right? That's the hidden agenda part of it. So there, I'm putting it in a way that people should meet both the needs of what is stated and what is hidden as well, because they may have their own personal ambitions to fulfill, which is the personal part of it, and we also have a societal responsibility. And as practitioners and also as people in academics, I personally think that whatever you do, it's part and parcel of the continuum in terms of making sure that you ultimately benefit the common man, the least common denominator or the final common denominator. Now, related to infection prevention and control, in academics, it's been our sort of what we have seen, and what is very visible is it's not only the infection prevention and control activities which happens in facilities like what Dr. Pradeep mentioned. It's also the fact that you have a lot of people, once they get discharged from the hospital or once they go back to their communities, etc., who is that with capacity who can take care of these people? So very frankly, earlier a term was used called as HAI. It was called as hospital associated infections. Do infections only happen in a hospital environment? Does it only matter to the people within the hospital, or when you're admitted, or when it is called as hospital associated or nosocomial infection? My answer was no, and it is very, very heartening as well to look at hospital associated infections today called as healthcare associated infections. So when you talk about healthcare associated infections, healthcare happens within a hospital setup, and also it happens within most of the preventive measures happens within the community setup. So as academicians, I think we have to respond to the needs of all these groups of people whom we should sort of think. So if you ask me in terms of what are the career prospects and what academics can do in the context of this pandemic, which has actually given us some sort of positive handicap in terms of very quickly putting together academic programs, very quickly trying to I should add a disclaimer here. Our IPC program was planned much before we rolled it out last year. It so happened that the pandemic came in when we rolled out this PGD IPC program. So I should say, I think our thinking was much ahead of the pandemic in terms of making sure that we were addressing a particular need. So from the academic point of view, whatever we will develop as career prospects should not only be restricted to a healthcare environment in terms of hospitals, but also to the final common denominator in terms of the caretakers or caregivers. I'll be able to elaborate more when we go into the details of it. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Professor. Actually, all of us say that we know that this pandemic nobody has expected. But one gentleman, all of you know his name. In 1915, talking on a TED, he said that infectious virus is going to be more dangerous than nuclear war. His name is Bill Gates. That time, nobody has taken it seriously, but it came. And I think preparedness was not optimum. But somehow very fast we could manage things nice. Coming back to IPC as a career, now I have a questions to the audience. The question is very plain and straight, taking it further from what Professor Sham has said just now. What career aspiration of yours, any course by any university or anybody should deliver the most for you? This is the questions, open questions I'm asking you. You can respond the poll, and if the answer is others, you can put in the chat box also. After this, we'll go to the Dr. Ranga Reddy to understand what are the different, what is actually infection preventionist, and what are the role an infection preventionist play at the different setup, with hospital setup or with community setup, and which are the people who play this role, who wear the cap of infection preventionist. That will be questions to Dr. Bangaredi. Before that, I'm open for the poll, and I see people are responding here. Audience may not be able to see the result till we in the poll. So very good to see that people are responding, and all answers are correct. There is no right and wrong answer. That's why it's very personal to you that what is the most aspiration you have from any IPC course from a university or anybody. Okay, people are responding. I'm ending the poll now. Respond in 10 seconds if anybody has not responded. Ending the poll, and will show you the result. Now you will be able to see the result that very, very interesting to note that 73% people wanted a deeper and wider knowledge of IPC. I think people believe that if you know deeper and wider, possibly you can do better intervention in a hospital. And if you are able to contribute more in a hospital setup, I think the career is an obvious outcome. Career progress is obvious outcome. 11% wanted to get a new job after doing this. 7% maybe in same company, same job, but higher responsibility and promotion. 3% obviously wanted increase in salary. That's good. And another 3% wanted a new role altogether. Maybe they may not be in the IPC role, and they may want to shift the career into IPC. With this input from the audience, now coming to Dr. Ranga Reddy, the President of Infection Prevention and Control Academy of India. What is infection prevention? Who is infection preventionist? Would you elaborate us?
Sure, Pranaji. I think infection prevention and control is a relatively new topic. It is only, I think, since 1970s. This specialty started emerging in US especially, right? And then it has become a practice worldwide. So if you look at very basic terminology, an infection control practitioner, or very shortly what we say infection preventionist, is a person who is responsible for disease prevention in hospitals and healthcare facilities. It is more often than kind of scenarios. It is usually a doctor or a nurse who assume the responsibility of infection preventionists, and usually the infection control practitioners, that is either infection control officers or infection control nurses, they usually have a very strong research and investigative skills, and they usually are very well versed with public health matters that enables them actually to deliver their duties very efficiently. Infection preventionists are the people who specialize in prevention and control of infectious disease outbreaks when we talk about a hospital setting. Usually,
Is there issue in the voice? I'm not hearing him.
Yes, sir. I think Dr. Ranga Reddy has gone off. I think Pradeep sir can continue, and then we'll come back to Ranga Reddy sir once he's done.
Yeah, I think that's better. So, taking up from there, Dr.
Yes,
Pradeep,
yes,
being a medical director, how you see what kind of role a corporate sector precisely, and if you could also tell about the public sector hospitals or institutions, what kind of role related to infection prevention and control can be there and can grow further in hospital setup.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Actually, I think there was a glitch. I went out of the room for some time. I'm sorry for that. Am I interrupting some discussion? Can I continue with that, or shall I?
Yes, sir.
Continue so that
Okay.
it will be meaningful when we move further.
Sure. Usually the infection control officers or infection control nurses, they require kind of knowledge of epidemiology and also application of public health practices in acute care hospital environment as well as the community level also. Usually, as we already discussed, before I cut off from the conversation, are the people who are responsible for prevention, investigation, monitoring, and reporting of the spread of diseases within the hospitals. This role of infection control practitioners, it usually combines epidemiological and public health kind of practices with some administrative tasks also. That's why these people should be very communicative people who would be able to lead and also, be not the enemy, by putting the wrong kind of words into in the communication, but lead them by example with sharing of the knowledge, empathy, etc., etc. These are the people usually use scientific research in order to recommend, implement, and also the monitoring the policies within the healthcare institution where they are working. And also, if you look at more practical aspects of it, it is sterilization of the equipment, disinfection, and also looking at the hand hygiene practices, etc., etc. Also, become their job role kind of stuff. And infection control practitioners also have got a very big role in terms of training the people. Either they are the clinicians, or they are actually the nurses, or they are even some of the people who are working as outsourced staff in order to do the cleaning procedures. They have a responsibility towards educating them, means that is training them, imparting the skills. Because unless you are going to educate the people, including the housekeeping staff, you will never be able to get into the right kind of practices. This is one aspect which is related to directly working in the healthcare setup. And there is another dimension to infection preventionist, that is working with communities. Means they had to serve the public health interests by implementing disease outbreak intervention procedures in affected areas. For example, COVID-19 is the best example. When it has happened, the infection preventionists have worked beyond the boundaries of their own hospital. They have worked with the communities in order to deliver the right communications, informing the public about the outbreak or the pandemic, and then suggesting the right kind of measures in order to protect the large populations within the given area. So broadly, these are the areas. Then coming to the second part of the question, what you have asked, Pranavji, is who are the people who can take up this role as infection control officer or infection control nurse, or generally speaking, infection control practitioners. They can be from any science stream as far as this course is concerned, but preferably they should be coming from healthcare background, or healthcare education, or pharmaceutical education, or even veterinary, or including the dental, etc., etc. Because that will give them a head start in terms of actually getting very quickly into the course and get maximum benefit out of it. And also they will be able to do a good job when they go into a particular institution where they have to serve not only the hospital but also the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ranga. I think you have given a very broad and extensive role, scope, functions of IPC. Now coming to the practical aspect of that, to be precise, in the first in the corporate setup, in the what kind of role are there? What are the opportunities available for a person, a healthcare professionals who has duly trained in IPC? What are the career prospects in a corporate hospital? I would like to ask from Dr. Pradeep Panigrahi, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pranav. As you said, thanks to Dr. Ranga, who has actually highlighted on the broadly about the scopes and the training requirement as far as infectious control and prevention is concerned. The personalities or the persons who are supposed to come for infectious control and prevention has to be well trained. They should have the basic concept, and application of that concept is what we look into the corporate field. Maybe it's for the doctors and nurses or the supporting staff. Each and everyone has to contribute for this program for infectious control in healthcare. Corporates or public sector, hospitals, anywhere, scenario is almost the same. Everybody is obsessed, has to be obsessed with infectious control. As I said, first motive of us to our patients is to do no harm. As a practicing surgeon, as a practicing lab surgeon and GI surgeon, I know pretty well how it matters to me or even my cases should be clean and if my poster patients as even a SSI, I am obsessed, how I get obsessed with my nurses, my team and all that. Same thing happens with my entire scenario. Whether it's ICU or whether it is the basic OPD or whether it is the operation theatre. We all have our infectious control protocols. We have our infectious control policies in place and to be practiced by each member of the community. Here the greatest role comes is the healthcare workers who are designated as infectious control officer and the ICN, that is the infectious control nurse. So the infectious control officer, as I said earlier also, is preferably a microbiologist or a physician who is practicing infectious control or had a training in infectious control, or it can be an intensivist who is keen on infectious control with due training. So we formulate a team or a committee called HICC, Hospital Infectious Control Committee, which is chaired by usually the medical director of the organization and supported by the first member or the member secretary is the infectious control officer and the HCN. Here the role of infectious control officer and HCN is not only to formulate and do the principles and protocols, but we have to see that is implemented. The first and foremost thing before doing that, as Dr. Ranga said, it requires the knowledge of epidemiology, the surveillance. We have to go each nooks and corner of the healthcare facility, and each member of the facility is trained and made a part of the surveillance program. After a HAI surveillance, we have multimodal strategies for it. We have to monitor it. We have to make an audit of it. Then, based on that, we formulate protocols and policies. This will help us to know what is our workload, what is our staffing should be, what the numbers of staff for infectious control as per the bed occupancy. Based on this only we decide on those things. And based on this surveillance, audit and formulation of policies, we build up a robust infrastructure or environment and keep adequate equipments for the prevention and control of infections. So, for my listeners and for the participants, I can say a trained infectious control nurse or a trained infectious control officer is a great asset to the modern healthcare scenario. As Dr. Ranga said, Professor Samana said, wherever you choose this career, you will never be jobless. Jobs will be created because infection is never going away from us. It is there with us and will remain with us. Like current pandemic, it will come down in its infectivity. It will come down its virulence based on the method and measures we implement within ourselves, to the community, as well as in our healthcare scenarios. So, an infectious control nurse will have a growing demand because WHO as well as NABH has recommended one ICN for 250 bedded. So the moment we have higher bed occupancies, we require more and more. Our team has to be larger and larger. Otherwise, we will not be able to bring the infections control measures as well as the infectious control within limit or within our targeted limits. Thank you. I'll proceed further to new questions.
Thank you, Dr. Pradeep. Very happy to note that what you said, that the requirement of infection prevention and control professionals is going to be bigger and bigger, larger and larger. If you follow what is required, that sometime back, I think before COVID-19 came, we in infection control Academy of India were debating, discussing that what is the supply and demand for infection prevention in India, per se. So many metrics, so many indicator, number of beds available, number of trained microbiologists available, and somehow we arrived at a very gross requirement that India require 1 lakh infection prevention specialist. I'm talking about before COVID-19, right? With the kind of we are getting from Dr. Pradeep, he says that possibly we were very conservative to say that. It means there is a gap between demand and supply. And who can fulfill this gap? The industry as well as the academicians, the academics body. So my questions to Professor Shamna is that, being a responsible, top-notch University of Hyderabad, what your university is doing to meet this gap between supply and demand in infection prevention and control?
So thank you very much, and I think I'll take off from where both Ranga sir and also Pradeep sir just mentioned. We'll have to understand first and foremost, we are not only moving from bench to bedside when it comes to infection prevention and control, but in the connotation of war and battle, we also talk of brass tacks. So we are talking of the 3 Bs in terms of bench-based, bedside-based, and brass tacks. So this is extremely important, which means that we are looking at basic research, we are looking at applied or clinical research, as well as we are looking at public health related research. So where do infection prevention and control professionals fit into it? They fit in everywhere. So in terms of being necessary at the labs, being necessary at molecular level, genetic level, doing clinical work, making sure that the quality systems and the management systems are also taken care of, as well as addressing the needs of the community, for which as a university, that is where I think our strength comes in as a university, which is quite unique, because public universities or central universities like us don't actually have schools of medical sciences. When I tell people that I work in a school of medical science, they think that there is MBBS students, there are nursing students, there are allied health professionals. As a matter of fact, we don't have any of them in terms of the courses which we offer. But we are quite innovative in terms of the program which we have put together. And from there, I think we are now using this as a channel in terms of really looking at aspects like infection prevention and control much more deeply. Very frankly, in terms of demand and supply, I will make it amply clear that you can't meet the supply because the demand is so very huge, which means we don't have a choice but to make sure that it's everybody's business. It's like saying that IPC is not only the business of corporates or not only business of academies of infection control academy or universities, it's everybody's damn business. I think if we understand that, I'm being very blunt about it, but I know that the reason for this bluntness comes from the fact that we need people at all levels in order to complement, supplement, and also directly So from the university's sake, what the strengths I count is we are a very interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary university, which means we have schools which work exclusively on life science aspects, schools which look at social sciences and behavioral sciences, schools and centers which look at neural cognitive science, then also looks at things like psychology. Then we have our own school which looks at biomedical sciences, public health, allied health professional training, etc. Even things like humanities, school of communication. Today, the pandemic is not very dangerous. I guess over a period of time, the pandemic will become less dangerous, but the infodemic is much more dangerous, right? We should count on this, the social media warriors or the WhatsApp universities, which are actually creating bigger problems with respect to how do you counter fake news? How do you actually make sure that what you're doing is being whose responsibility it is? So I remember during my undergraduate days and also much before that, WHO had a very nice connotation. So when I think of training programs and what universities like us should be doing, we think that we all should become a 5-star health professional. Now, what is this 5-star health professional? A 5-star health professional should be a care or a service provider. If you're talking of IPC, if you're talking of a service, if you're doing a service. If you're a nurse, you're a care provider. If you're a manager, you're a service provider. Next, you should be a very good communicator. When I say you should be a communicator, you should communicate with your patients, you should communicate with the community, you should communicate with everybody. So communication at all levels. So 2 of the 5 stars are care provider, communicator. Third very important things, leadership, which means decision maker. At your own level, you have to make decisions, which means that in any program which we run, we'll also have to make sure that we expose them to situations where they have to think on their feet. If not on their feet, on their fingers at least, in terms of coming up with decisions and take decisions. Because in an environment like a hospital, you have a senior, but in an environment where you are alone, say for instance, you're a midwife or an auxiliary nurse midwife, you'll have to take decisions on your own. So you have to be a decision maker. I said a communicator, a decision maker, in terms of being a community leader. Don't forget, I think you also have to drive, or you have to be an important stakeholder in terms of being a very important leader as well. And last but not the least, I think it's important for us also to be very good managers in terms of managing the situation. Leadership is one aspect. Also making sure that you manage the situation. Like for instance, if you're going to put together guidelines, protocols, etc., how are you implementing it? Whether it is within the scheme of things. So where do we stand with the university? At this point in time, we have a master's program in public health. We have also centers like regional studies, which work on aspects related to disasters, medical geography, etc. We also have very unique programs in life sciences and phenomenal research in Kala Azar, dengue, newer antibiotics. For those of you who may know, who may not know, the last antibiotic discovered was about 40 years ago. We don't have a new antibiotic which we have discovered, but apparently one of our lakes within the universities has some fungus which has probably the potential to have a new antibiotic. I don't know on whose name it will go, but it will definitely come up. In terms of what I'm trying to tell you is, we have opportunities to look at programs and courses where you can fit in within the bench, bedside, and the brass tacks environment. Just a few days ago, and we've been, looking at aspects related to when we started with a primer course on infection prevention control. Then we expanded it to a diploma course in infection control. Now we think that we also have to address issues related to antimicrobial resistance, right? That is becoming a huge problem, because at the community level, if you go to any poultry farm or if you go to any livestock related, everybody uses antibiotics just like the way they use fertilizers. Unfortunately, that is precipitating a bigger problem. And last but not the least, I think it's very, very important for us also to look at this concept of what is called as One Health, wherein so our programs academically, universities like us, will be looking at aspects related to plant sciences. We have a school which looks at plant sciences, animal biology, animal sciences. We have one. We also have partners. Third, human biomedical, which we already have. Environment, it's a non-negotiable in terms of environmental science. Nutrition, very important for us as well. Plant nutrition. So logically, if you look at it, it's only a beginning. The IPC initiative for us is an entry point. Very frankly, we have a lot of interest from School of Management Studies. My own students, some of them may be participating here, have been, asking me, sir, what is the scope for people like us in infection prevention and control? I said, bloody well, if you don't find out the scope, who will find out? Because who will manage situations? Who will be requested for quality management? Who will be requested for, who would be required for actually making sure the protocols and all those kind of things are thing. Please excuse my slang, but it is only the reason why I say this is to provoke people to really make a decision in terms of looking at infection prevention and control. And as a university, as much as we have responsibility towards our students and towards the academics, we are also very, very big responsibility towards the social responsibility, or what is called as university social responsibility or accountability. And we have to deliver and develop courses which are skilling, upskilling, skill development, job ready, professional thing. Just to end by saying, the national new education policy, which has been accepted last year, gives us a scope, plenty of scope to put together so many programs at the certificate level, at the diploma level, at the advanced level, master's level as well. Why can't we have an MPH with Dr. Rangareddy's help, specializing in infection prevention and control? That will be the unique program anywhere in this part of the world at least. And we have great teachers like Dr. Pradeep, etc., who can help us with this program. So I would provoke you, I would urge you, I would, really tell you that please look at it more carefully in terms of career opportunities and come up with, requests, and we will address the request through academic programs. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor. Actually, the kind of canvas you plotted is looking very exciting, and One Health is something looks very, very attractive and logical. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam concept, right? So coming back to the I think a lot of questions were there when people asked about the course which University of Hyderabad and Infection Control Academy of India has launched last year before COVID-19 came. So I would request Dr. Rangareddy to tell detail about the course briefly, because we have still 5-6 minutes time. And you can, two things I would request you first, to give a concluding marks along with the course also, so that quickly we can complete one quick round of concluding remarks from all three panelists one by one. So, Dr. Rangareddy.
Thank you very much, Pranavji. There are a couple of pointers, I would like to leave, because, this is a discussion to enable probably to the people who are aspiring actually to get into infection prevention and control as a career or as an interest. So probably, I will leave with, a couple of thoughts before, moving into the curriculum itself. One, as Dr. Panigrahi has mentioned, World Health Organization has very clearly mentioned that, for every 250 beds, you need to have one infection control, nodal officer. Either it could be infection control officer or infection control nurse, but they had to be trained, at least through some kind of mechanism, because various countries have got various mechanisms, and it had to be a formal degree program or diploma program. Okay, it is not a small 3-day or 5-day or 1 week or 2 weeks or 3-week certificate program, which Infection Control Academy had been offering, and many others are also offering, including let's say JIPMER, you have Shankar Netralaya and many other colleagues, including today Professor Vijay Lakshmi could not actually address this gathering because of some exigency, but she also is offering probably a couple of week program, which is also a IPC program. But that would not count towards the number what Dr. Panigrahi has talked about. This 1:250, these are the specialists who are specifically trained in an academic program with a longer duration, like 1 year or beyond. Okay, such programs are available as of date only in developed world, that is United States, Europe, especially UK and Australia. As far as now, since there is a global audience, I would also like to pass on this message to them, that as of now, Asia, Africa, Middle East does not have any structured program, which is an academic program which is offered by any university of repute in this part of the world. And hence, actually, the program which is being offered through University of Hyderabad is not only a pioneering one, but also it is a very innovative and practical solution to address the needs of the globe, which has been prescribed by World Health Organization. That is point number one, which I want to specify. Point number two, I would not take global data, because in US they are talking about huge shortage of infection preventionists at the moment. They need about 20,000 people who had to come into that stream. Probably, recently Prime Minister of India talked about India being a kind of Vishwaguru and also the supplier of these kind of services to the world. Probably we could also create that kind of capacity, which can not only serve India, but also serve globally, including the developed world. That is second pointer, I would like to make. Third pointer, very, very important, because we are talking at the moment in Indian and also low, medium income country kind of context. India today has got a shortage of 6 lakh doctors and almost like 20 lakh nurses today, or a kind of scarcity what we have. And the situation with this scarcity does not stop with provision of the services which are supposed to be provided by the hospital, but it also exacerbates the situation because of lack of these profession there is an increase in healthcare associated infections everywhere, in every hospital, every clinic, etc., etc. That is the bigger danger. And to address that kind of danger, right, keeping in view the pointer 1 and 2, we definitely, on a priority basis, we need to move on to create that kind of capacity for India and the world. And one more pointer I would like to give, which probably the intelligent audience would be able to absorb and extrapolate that. That is 2011 budget of Indian government. If you look at 2 points, what had been repeatedly talked about by the finance minister is about prevention and wellness. Prevention and wellness. So there is a lot of funding which is going to happen, and which is also going to have its own trickle-down effect in terms of creating that kind of positions where infection prevention educated kind of people would be coming very handy. That means that is going to create a good job opportunity. So that had to be also looked at in order to make your decision. So these are the broad numbers, because I am on the side of both academics and also industry, I would be able to, put these things in perspective. That is number one part. Second part, as you talked about the curriculum. The curriculum which has been developed initially was keeping in mind the normal kind of scenario. And in fact, if you remember, Pranavji, when the COVID-19 came, most of the people had been asking one and the same question. Either it is government officials or private hospital owners, that did you actually create this pandemic in order to create the demand for your program? Of course, it is a joke, but we could foresee. Not only we could foresee, a lot of people could foresee that these kind of health emergencies are going to come, and hence, a pioneering program has been put together. And even today, after going through all this cataclysm, I would call as the pandemic, we are not going to have any end to these kind of health emergencies in the future. They are going to come back with increased vigilance, number one, and increased rapidity, number two. And hence we need the preparedness. And hence, these kind of programs need to be there, not only in University of Hyderabad, but in multiple universities, in multiple settings, it had to be offered. The curriculum, which has been tweaked for DAPC 2021, has taken the basis from World Health Organization published document called as Competencies of Infection Preventionists, which was published just now in 2020. A lot of my friends from Europe, from Russia, from Arab world, a lot of my colleagues, ex-colleagues and friends, they have participated in creating this document called as Competencies Required for Infection Preventionists in the Global Scenario. We have taken those competencies and tweaked them, adding few more to that. Some of the very standard features which are there is about the standard precautions, then setting up a HACC, which Dr. Panigrahi talked about, creating the manuals, surveillance programs, and hospital epidemiology. All these things are already there. What we have added more is two more or three more things. One, the healthcare economics or the infectionomics, that is the word which I have coined long back. The cost of infections or the economy of infections, that is the word which we have added, which we are going to help the people understand, because when you are going to work in a hospital, it is very difficult to make your management agree to make spending on infection prevention and control practices. That means you should be in a position to understand what are the economics, and you should be able to put up a business case to prove that it is beneficial for organization, it is in the good, it is for the good of the hospital, etc., etc. That is what we are also going to teach additionally. And we are also probably going to introduce a little bit of leadership skills and communication skills, because these are very essential in order to put together the team, get them all onto the same platform, and to direct them towards a common objective. And hence we are also going to touch base on them. And I would not go now into much micro details. Whoever is interested, they can approach us. Some of the information is already available on the website, and more can be made available to the people who are interested to know even more detail than what I have talked. Thank you, Pranoj.
Thank you, Dr. Rangareddy. Now, I would request Dr. Pradeep Panigrahi to give your concluding remark, and then we move to Professor Shyam.
Yeah, already thanks Dr. Rangareddy and Professor Samanna for almost covering of in the nutshell what we require: the manpower, the academics, the epidemiology, the things should be covered. Almost everything is what has been did and is required, has been covered in today's panelist. And thanks to you all for this. Definitely, as Dr. Ranga said, this is a newer thing. What you said, sir, you're right, that the requirement of infectious control specialists per bed, as you have defined at 250, in due course it may be too short. We may require more even. And that need will be coming in shortly in our pipelines, as we are looking at wellness rather than disease treatment. So wellness centers are the primary focus of the government as well as the corporates. So wellness centers comes, that means wellness is a different definitions, different terminology altogether. Because here we don't want to see patients, we want to see healthy people. And to have to reach that level, we definitely have to control or shield them from infections. And that need to be reached to the community level. So currently what we have infectious control officers and nurses are at the healthcare levels or at the healthcare facilities, maybe public or maybe private. But now we'll be requiring these personnel to be taking as the messiah or stewardess of infectious control to the community, to the people, to the society. So probably the future is going to be a brighter and brighter for the people. And I'm thankful to the ICFI for actually structuring beautiful program which we are actually need for it, to have a qualified and actually trained infectious control nurse. Very simply, a couple of days back, I had an interview for my structuring to add one more ICN. She was a BSc and MSc qualified nurse. She said, first question I asked her is, what are the basics of infectious control? What you do? She only gave one reply: hand washing, hand washing, and hand washing. Each time I used to ask, she used to say only one answer: hand washing and hand hygiene. So I understood, because she is not a trained, she has never been understood the epidemiology, the surveillance, or the audit about infectious control. She has no idea, no clues. Obviously, we look for people where which will add on value rather than only controlling. We have to train. All manpower has to be training. As Dr. Ranga said from the beginning, training is the most important aspect of infectious control. And that is where we as healthcare personnel, managers of healthcare, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pradeep. Thanks. Before ending with Professor Sham, I just want to inform people, the audience, that because many questions I see coming up and sent in the survey also about the DIPC program, the course which University of Hyderabad has. So you can see right now there PGDIPC is the website. If you go to the website, you can see the more detail about. Some question was very simple question like it is online, offline. What is the kind of medium to get trained? So everything is given there. If you have any question, there is a contact email ID given there. You can ask the questions also. And this admission is open till 15th March. So if you are in this very reputed, globally accepted university certificate, university diploma in infection prevention and control, a catch on the opportunity which you saw is there emerged post COVID-19. I request you to sign up for this course and see there at pgdipc.com. With this, I request Professor Sham to sum up and close this session of this day.
Thank you very much, Pranavji, and thanks, sir, and thanks both of you for making my life simple. I guess I'll just end with a couple of pointers and tell you what exactly we are proposing or we are aiming to do. First and foremost, I think you have to understand Budget 2021 for the first time talks of a national institution of One Health. It talks of 3 nodal national institutes of virology in addition to things in Pune and Chennai, etc., where you're talking of setting up close to 650 public health labs, 3,700, 3,800 community level sort of monitoring mechanisms or surveillance mechanism, which Pradeep sir did mention. So as a university, I think we have what is called as the, in management terms, Ranga sir will bear me out, first mover advantage in terms of having programs which fit in very well within the concept of these institutions, etc. Other facilitating factors which we have is the UGC recognized university and being the institute of eminence, which means among the 10 institutions of eminence in the country, 5 of which are in the public sector and 5 of which are in the private sector, we are one of the institutions of eminence. And the second thing is we have what is called as level 1 graded autonomy, which means we have all the opportunities to develop and implement our own programs. Whether it's a certificate at the university level, we can do a certificate, diploma, etc. But we also have to be under the regulation in terms of, at the moment, UGC. I told you about the national and new education policy, and not to forget, I think there is a bill called as Allied Health Professional Central Council Bill or Act, which is pending within the Parliament. It's actually it's there. It's about to be passed. If the Parliament sits, in case we don't have these issues related to farmer strikes and pulling on, etc., that's the first bill which will get passed. In which case, whether it is nurse, whether it is a medical professional, whether it is a paramedic, whether it is a lab technician, etc., you will have an overarching regulatory body in terms of the National Medical Commission, the Nursing Commission, the Allied Health Professional Commission, and different commissions in terms of regulating environment, regulating our education and regulating our academics. And top of it, we are as a university it is. I think one point of contention which many of the people may have, and this question needs to be answered, is are people with diploma qualifications not entitled to do this particular program? I think that is a sticking point which we will try and address as quickly as possible, but you have to bear with us. We just completed, or we are completing one program. The next program is coming up. We have a lot of interest. I think all of us who were in the screening committee of applications last time were very, unhappy that we were not able to make this course available to people or frontline people who are working in difficult circumstances by virtue of not having a graduation, but they have a diploma. Let us see, we will push it, but we have to go through the mandatory and statutory bodies within the university and also align with the UGC mandate. And based on that, we will definitely make sure that we will make it open for people. Very happy to tell you that a lot of people from the Gulf and a lot of people from Gulf countries, especially GCC countries, are also part and parcel of our first course. Thank you very much for patronizing us, and we look forward to your continued support. In addition to our Mera Bharat Mahan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With this, we conclude this session. Thank all the panelists. Thank you to all the participants. We could not answer all the questions, so what we will do, we will send you a brief note to all the registered people to get their questions answered in the note itself. This you will get by tomorrow. We will also send you the recording of this session also by email tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. With this, we are closing this session today.
Thank you.